listening to the Rainmaking Podcast, hosted by high-stakes headhunter, author, and professional speaker, Scott Love.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Love, and thanks for joining me on the Rainmaking Podcast. One thing that I've learned in business is that principles are malleable. The concepts of success can transfer from one business to another. As a lot of you know, I'm a watercolor artist. I've been painting with watercolors for years. I've taken lessons. YouTube's a great teacher, and I've gotten pretty good at that. Well, recently, I ventured into acrylics. I've painted probably about 4 paintings with acrylics, and the most recent one, I was just really amazed because the principles of art apply to other media. The same thing with business. Our guests today are Terry and Drew Edwards, a father and son team that work with recruiting firms around the world. Now, even though they work within the recruiting industry, the concepts that they have apply to other types of business development. So if you're in the business of getting business, regardless of the industry in which you work, make sure you listen to today's show and take good notes. Terry and Drew help recruiting and search firm owners make more placements for the right fee with less work and fewer headaches. They've been doing that for about 14 years, and they've coached thousands of recruitment and search firm owners all over the world. Make sure you check out their show notes. And today's topic is why most clients will not engage you and what to do about that. I hope you get some great ideas from my interview with Terry and Drew today. As always, thanks for listening. Hey everyone, this is Scott Love. Thanks for joining me on the Rainmaking Podcast. Today, I've got some legends on my show. I've got Terry Edwards and Drew Edwards. Fellas, thanks for joining me on the program today.
Scott, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us.
This is
having us on.
Absolutely. I've heard of both of you guys for years, so I'm really honored that you'd be on my show today. And just for our listeners, we're going to talk about our topic, which is why most clients will not engage you and what to do about that. But first, tell us about you guys. Tell us about what you've done in your careers, where you are, and how you got into the work that you're doing.
Over to you, Drew.
Well, for me personally, obviously grew up with my dad, who was a recruiter growing up. I went to university to study marketing. And then, by the time I'd finished, he started working with recruiters, helping them with marketing and sales. So it just was a natural, progression for me to join up with Terry, sort of give my, I'm sort of obviously the younger one. You say, obviously, you'll see if you see our pictures. But just a modern spin on, traditional marketing, sales, business development efforts. And it's sort of, it's just worked really well for the clients that we help.
That's great. And then how about you, Terry? Tell us about your background.
Yeah, so very quickly, my background predominantly in sales. I was a sales trainer for a company I'm sure you've heard of called FedEx many years ago, then got into executive search and worked for a big search firm in the UK called St. Martin's doing executive search, and then went off on my own. It's whilst I was on my own, it's well documented. I had some major challenges in my own business. The biggest challenge that I had was actually getting clients. I was a great recruiter, I knew how to do search, but my biggest challenge was actually getting business. And I actually met somebody, a coach, he shared something with me, and he said, it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do, you will not be successful until you master the art of client attraction. And that was like a lightning bolt, because I kind of got it, because it was so true. It didn't matter how good I was. The key was being able to attract clients. Drew went off to university. While Drew was at university, he used to share things with me, such as social media, which at the time was just like, what? You do what with Facebook and LinkedIn and that kind of thing.
Right.
And in fairness, all joking apart, it kind of opened my eyes to some of the things you can do. And Drew was very modest, and he missed out that when he was at university, I set up the coaching business, and Drew was doing telesales for me. And literally ringing staffing firms and booking appointments.
Yeah, I think you called me, Drew.
I called everyone. But what we discovered was that nobody likes making cold calls and nobody likes receiving them. But when we implemented the marketing campaign, so then the telesales were calling people that knew who we were, the response was just amazing. And, I remember the best ever day, if you don't remember, Drew, it was a Friday. We got 14 appointments on one day just by calling people. But the difference is that they knew who we were.
Right.
And again, another massive breakthrough. And I sort of finally got it, people will respond better if they know who you are.
And I'm kind of curious to hear more about that, Terry. But one thing that's on my mind, what's it like working as father and son? And folks, if you see their photos, you would say they're not father and son, they're twin brothers. They're twin brothers.
And Scott, do you know what? That's what I tell everybody all the time. And honestly, Scott, between you and I, it's not easy, I have to say.
Right.
No, seriously. And we joke about it, but on a purely personal level, it's a pleasure. I'm really looking, I joke about it a lot, but I get the pleasure to talk to my son every day of the week, and we work together, and we are very alike in the way that we think and the way that we approach things. I'd say that Drew's probably the logical one. Drew's very logical and will always look at things from a logical viewpoint, whereas at times my emotions can get in the way, and I'll say that it can get in the way, but Drew's very logical, and it's a real pleasure to be working with my son and working with Drew.
That's great. So tell us more about this. When you said it's easier to get people to respond when they know who you are, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I tell you, Drew, back to you on that, because you experienced it when you were doing the telemarketing. How you found it, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of common sense when you think about it. We're not saying that cold calling doesn't work. It definitely does. But I think what's happened over the years, most audiences, most prospects have, almost become immune to it, and they're expecting it. They get dozens of cold calls a day, so their guards up all the time. But with sort of the digital technology that we've got, if you can break that guard down before you make the call, it makes it a lot easier. So I always ask the question: given a choice, you've got two lists of prospects. One list, list A, they're in your market, but they have no idea who you are, have never heard of you, don't know what you do. And you've got list B, who know who you are, know what service you offer, know a bit about you, your background, have seen some of your content. And, who would you rather spend your time calling, right? And the obvious answer is list B. That's not to, disregard list A. It's just, let's work on list A for a few days, few weeks, few months, whatever, build the relationship without picking up the phone. So when we do pick up the phone, we're more likely to get the result that we want.
Right. That makes sense. So how do you get to that point? What do you do to get to that point?
For most business owners, they've probably got 3 or 4 ways of getting business. They've got cold calling, telephone, they've got networking, they've got word of mouth is another one, and maybe referrals. And that's what most businesses do when it comes to getting business. They will use one of those 4 methods. And as Drew rightly said, there's nothing wrong with those methods, in particular cold calling, but there are in fact over 100 different ways that you can get in front of a potential client and get their attention. Mm-hmm. And some of it's what we call organic, where you don't have to do paid advertising. And some of it is actual paid advertising. So you could advertise, let's say, on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever to get in front of your target audience. And I think the other thing to add as well is, if you think you can place an ad or do some marketing and say to the potential client, give me your card details and let's do business, that's unlikely. But actually offering a solution to a potential client and position yourself as an authority, you'll get a much better response. So let's say it was a law firm. I'm being very crude on this, but if you were to create, let's say, I don't know, an ebook, 7 essential questions you must ask a law firm before you engage them. Right. Get this free book. Now, if you were to offer that, we call it a client magnet, to your target audience, of people who had a need. Let's say you're a corporate lawyer, so you're sending this out to organizations. 7 essential questions to ask a corporate lawyer before you engage them. Right. What we know is the majority of people will ignore that message, and that's fine. Most marketing is ignored anyway. But what we also know is that the percentage that respond to that message, at the very least, they must be thinking about engaging somebody in that market, be it a law firm or a search firm, because they wouldn't request the report in the first place.
Let me ask you this, Terry, if I could. You mentioned a client magnet. Is that actually a term that you use when you're doing your consulting work, a client magnet?
Yeah, something that will get the attention of your potential client.
And what are some other examples of this that you've seen?
Drew, give some other examples of client magnets that you could use.
I think, just to go back a step, I think like your sort of job as, if you're involved in business development, if you want to be a rainmaker, your job is to, you've got your audience, you've got to separate the ones who are, we call it now buyers or future buyers, if you've got 1,000 prospects, there's only a small percentage of them who are in the market to buy right now. Right. So what can you do to sort of get the ones who are in the market to buy right now to raise their hand and express an interest in what you do? So that's where the client magnet will come in. It can take any form. Terry mentioned an ebook, could be a video, could be a podcast, could be whatever. But it's something that you can offer, with the view of building a relationship. But, you also know that anyone that's interested in that thing is also interested in the service that you provide.
Right. That's interesting. So let me kind of pause right here. And you said something that I thought was interesting. You're segmenting your clients based on when you think they'll use your services into a now buyer or a future buyer. As we're developing a strategy and implementing the ideas that you talk about, should we put a preference on one of those? Like, just because the money is closer to us, does that mean that's the best decision to focus on? What do you think about that?
Well, your now buyers is the smallest section of your market. So it's going to be like between sort of 5 and 10% of the entire market. And now buyers are going to engage in what you're offering anytime soon. So it kind of makes sense to be targeting those. But it depends as well how long it takes for a deal to get over the line. So if you're in a sector where it may take 9 months to get the deal over the line, somebody that's thinking about it today but knows it's not going to probably close until 9 months, you could argue that they are a now buyer, so to speak.
Right.
But it's also worth cultivating the relationship with those who aren't now buyers right now, but at some time in the future they will be. So you can say something there, Drew?
Yeah, 100%. I was going to just, again, reinforce what you said. I think you focus on both. For me, it comes down to where the majority of your time and attention goes to in terms of your manual work, right? So, I mean, with technology, with your team, with whatever, we can sort of either automate or outsource a lot of the, the relationship building stuff with the future buyers, the more long-term business development. But the ones who are going to buy this month, next month, that's who you want to be speaking to today, right? So I think that's where your focus goes in terms of your manual labor, if that makes sense.
And so let me kind of recap some of the things you talked about. The client magnets, those are items that are bright, shiny objects that people that have problems see that item as a solution. And Drew, you're talking about books, videos, podcasts. What are some other examples of these client magnets? Like a white paper, I guess?
Yeah. The thing is, it doesn't need to be an item. It can be a question.
Interesting.
It can be a question. So depending on what market you're in, but, if you're trying to think, I use recruitment to recruitment. So Scott, you've got a recruitment business, right? If I just ask you the question, whether this is face-to-face, social media, or wherever, hey, Scott, if I could introduce you to a recruitment consultant with a track record of adding, $1 million to your bottom line, would you be interested in having a conversation about it?
Sure.
So that, I haven't created an ebook or anything. I've just asked the question. Right. I've now got permission to continue the conversation. So it doesn't have to be an item. It's just, how can we get them to raise their hand and express an interest in what you do?
So let me kind of go down this path if we could for a little bit. So I could actually, let's say I'm in professional services and there might be a trend based on the crisis, based on other variables, right? I might change this question every 6 months. I might take that question and I might have it as a podcast that I would take to trade associations that serve my niche. I might reach out to let's say I'm in a marketing business, or let's say I'm a lawyer that does antitrust. I might reach out to companies that are doing mergers and pose this question as a topic that I could use as a seminar, as a webinar, as a podcast, as an article. I mean, am I getting kind of warm? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely, yeah.
Literally, it's we just want to, gauge who's interested. So, it could be this podcast. It could be, I could, after we've done the recording, I could send an email out to my audience or post on LinkedIn. Hey, recorded a podcast last week where we talked about XYZ. Would you be interested in the recording? Right? If that XYZ is what I sell, anyone that's interested in that, I want to be having a conversation with.
And so let me kind of take what you said, Drew, and kind of go down this vein of gold, because I'm smelling opportunity here. And I think that let's just say, because in some people that are listening to the show, if I'm a recruiter and I sell to construction companies, I'm going to pick up the phone and I can cold call if I want to. For professional services like law firms, they just don't do that. But I want to put myself in the path of those people who have a problem that I could solve. And how I do that is by going to those people that are at the watering hole, trade associations, or the watering hole of business, of industry, of commerce, and reach out to them. And I could take what you said, and then let's say I did that. Let's say I'm an antitrust partner and I do a webinar on how to avoid conflicts and mergers or something like that. I might then look at my warm list. Who are all the people that I know that are either prospective buyers or can introduce me to buyers? And I don't want to call them and say, hey, you want to buy a chicken? You want to buy a chicken? I want to say, I produced a podcast for your very own trade association. and there are some salient points here I thought might be interesting to you. Take a listen. Here's the link, and then let it go. And then I've dangled that little bright, shiny object in front of them, and the rest is history. So, I mean, those are great ideas, Drew. And Terry, you mentioned that the smallest segment of our buyers are in the now buyers, but it seems like that's where everybody is focusing. They want the business today. Do you think that's a good strategy or a challenge, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and the challenge that we all have, whatever niche you operate in, is really identifying those now buyers, because you want the buyers that are going to pull the trigger on purchasing anytime soon. But we also acknowledge that let's stay with executive search. So a law firm may not need an executive search firm today, but they may need one, say, 12 months from now. But if you're marketing in such a way, because look, let's make a note of something. There are 4 key reasons why somebody won't engage you. The first one is they don't know you. So if you're an attorney, a law firm, or whatever, if your potential client doesn't know you, you stand no chance. So they've got to know you. They've got to like you. They've got to trust you, and they've got to have a need. So your marketing must ensure that those boxes are ticked. So the future buyer that's got no need for a search firm right now, it's still worth communicating with them so they get to know you, and with regular communication, such as podcasts, or you could do a webinar, or you could do an ebook, or you could have a group on Facebook where you give content and position yourself with authority on a regular basis. They're getting to know you, like you, and trust you. If you think about our relationship, Scott, this is the first time that we've ever spoken, but we've known of each other for, I'm going to say 12, 15 years.
That's exactly. Yeah. So we reached out to each other because those other boxes are ticked. You know, you like, and trust. And you think, hey, actually, it might be worth having a conversation, guys, about doing the podcast. But that's because of the marketing. So that hiring manager in that law firm that's not looking right now, if you can communicate to them now, when they are in the market, they can think, actually, there is that guy, Scott. I've seen his stuff. I've seen his webinars. I've seen his ebook. Or if it's a company looking for an attorney, there's that law firm. I've seen some of their material. Right. Clearly, they are experts. Clearly, they are an authority in this particular market. At the very least, it would be worth communicating to these guys to see what they think about what I'm thinking about doing. That's fantastic, Terry. I like the way you brought that together in a real easy to understand and a logical format. What do you think? Are there any pitfalls or any reasons why people don't think this way or don't go forward in their marketing efforts, or really having a plan, a business plan, or a structure built around these items that you talk about?
I think we're all guilty of this at some level, is that we are good at what we do. So you're a great search guy, or you might get a great attorney, so they're good at what they do. But ultimately, if you're a solicitor or attorney or whatever, your market don't want what you do. They want the results that you get. But we get bogged down. Yeah, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm the best there is in the States or whatever. The potential buyer doesn't want that. They want the results. And it's a great example. A mutual friend that Drew and I have. He's a fitness trainer. And most fitness trainers in the UK, they'll give it in dollars and pounds. They will charge between sort of $60 and 120, maybe $150 an hour.
Right.
The guy that we know, Phil, he charges $9,000 a quarter. But his approach is different, because most fitness trainers go, okay, I'm a fitness trainer, and every day we're gonna go running. You're gonna eat broccoli and have chicken and salad and so on. But what he says is he targets stockbrokers. He asks them what they want, and he says, I guess you want to be fit. And then he targets men, and they say, yeah, I want to have a six-pack. And he says, why? He says, well, I've got 3 kids, and I want to be able to play with the kids on the beach. And honestly, I want my wife to look at me in that way and suggest that we have early nights.
Right.
Now, yeah. Now, here's what he's selling.
What's his number?
So his argument is, you can either have chicken and broccoli and go running every day, or you can have a 6-pack and have more sex. And everybody's going to go, I have the 6-pack and more sex. See, your clients, Scott, don't want you for what you do. They want the results you're going to get. So if you're involved in a merger or acquiring a top attorney that's going to add millions to another law firm, that's what they want. They don't actually care about the process that you do. But we get caught up in that and say, yeah, but this is the process that we do. And we do this mapping, and the client doesn't care.
Yeah.
So you've got to communicate the benefit they're going to get from engaging with you, not the process that they're going to go through.
How do you think people can teach their minds to think this way? If somebody's never considered this before, do you think they should do surveys to past clients? Do you think they should just call their best clients and say, why did you work with me? What results? What do you think they should?
It's just thinking differently. And there's a saying in copywriting, when you write something, you go, so what? I've been an attorney for 20 years. So what?
Right.
And you should talk about the what. So what that means to you is, you can trust me. I've experienced all the things that you're going through right now. I'll give one moment and pass over to Drew. But let's say you're selling medication for migraine. Here we are. And this drug firm say, we've been established for 20 years and here's our office building and here's our mission statement. Nobody cares. If you've got a migraine, if the copy said, or you communicate like this, are you a migraine sufferer? Have you been laid up for days now with a migraine? And it sounds like you've got workmen in your head pounding away and there seems to be no end to it. Now, if you're a migraine sufferer, you're going, hell yeah, that's me. We've got a solution for you. When you take this tablet and they then talk about all those, we'll take away the pain. The tablet just melts in your mouth. Within an hour, you'll be playing with the kids again because that's what you want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one thing I've noticed too, that when we're selling and we're on a conference call with a client and we're asking investigative questions, we're probing, I found that we should even talk about the emotional context of our solution because we're not selling to companies, we're selling to individuals, we're selling to people, and everybody has their own personal agenda, their own personal motive.
100%.
That's right.
100%. I think that's where a lot of salespeople go wrong is they get so obsessed with their product, their service, and they spend the whole sales meeting, whole sales conversation talking about that and not really focusing on who it is they're selling to, what difference is it going to make for them, what outcome is it going to have for them, their business, their personal life, their marriage, all that's all, the deeper stuff, the deeper, I guess, benefits of what you do. That's where you, one, gets someone to buy into you and your service, but two, it makes your fee irrelevant. Going back to Terry's chicken and broccoli analogy, it's like, people will pay a lot more for, more sex than they will for chicken and broccoli in terms of,
right.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like you get clear on the outcome, the meaning to the buyer, you can charge higher fees and win more clients at the same time.
What's interesting, I was actually reading a book by a friend of mine, Henry DeVries. We've had him on the show a few times. It's called Client Attraction, Chain Reaction. And he talked about people are more interested in keeping from feeling pain than pursuing pleasure, where they'll work harder to avoid the downside than to pursue the upside. What do you think about that?
It's absolutely true. Two things there, Scott. First of all buying decisions are based on emotion and then justified with logic. All buying decisions. Numerous studies have been done. And very quick, if you go to a jeweler's, if you go to look at a magazine and look at watches, if you look at the face of the watch, it's at either 10 to 2, but it's a smiley face, 2:45 to 3, because they found if the time on the watch was showing a frown, sales declined.
Oh, really? Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, and don't take my word for it. Go and check for yourself and go online and have a look now. All buying decisions, if you think about adverts, what they're doing, they're deliberately tapping into your emotion. And yeah, that could be me in that flashy car and whatever. And you're absolutely right. We're motivated by two things: to avoid pain and gain pleasure. Everything that we do, that's the motivation.
Right.
However, psychologists found if you want somebody to make a decision, you've got to talk about avoiding the pain rather than the pleasure. So it's really simple. 7 questions to ask an attorney before you engage them. Now, asking these questions could cost you millions. It's one name of one ebook. Or you could say 7 questions to ensure that you get the best attorney.
Yeah.
The one that's going to talk about costing you millions will outperform most of the time because it's avoiding the pain.
Interesting. So in my next sales book, I could either title it How to Make a Fortune in Sales or How to Keep from Losing Out on Sales Opportunities. And that second one is probably going to sell more, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll have to rethink my next title.
And the logic says to go for the pleasure. And we want to people go, that's a very negative title. We say, yeah, it is. But all the evidence shows it will outperform anything else where you're avoid pain or gaining pleasure. Avoiding pain tends to outperform.
That's great. Well, let me ask you this, Terry and Drew. What are 3 action steps people can take to get started in integrating in implementing some of these ideas that you shared with us today.
Drew, you want to go first?
3 action steps. I think, for anyone in sales, 3 things. So first thing I'd say is you need to find a way or ways to daily, expand your network daily. A lot of salespeople make the mistake of having, their network of prospects, the list of prospects, and they work that list, but they don't spend any time growing it. So what can you do to continuously add to that, expand your reach with, all your messages? 2, I'd say, what can you do to build authority with your prospects before you call them, before you try and sell to them? So that's going to come under content. What content can you put out into the marketplace that is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you in terms of selling?
Right.
Like, if you could sort of put a video or an article or something in front of your prospects before you call them, that's going to, view you in a certain way when you pick up the phone or when you have a meeting with them, wherever it's going to be. What content can you put out that does that? And then 3, I guess goes full circle to what we're saying in the beginning. How can you get the buyers or the prospects in your network, the ones with intent to raise their hand and express an interest in what you do?
Right. Well, I think this is great content, Drew and Terry. Tell us about some of the offerings, some of the opportunities you have that people listening can take advantage of and learn more about. And we'll put all of your links on the show notes. So anybody that's listening here, if you want to reach out to Terry and Drew, just go to the show notes on where you heard this podcast. But what are some of the items that you have that are available for the listeners?
We target predominantly recruitment and staffing firms, but what we're sharing with you is applicable to any market, be it law, be it accountancy, chiropodist, any market whatsoever. The same rules and law apply. But as I said, we target recruitment and search firms, and we have a website which is called makemoreplacements.com. So if you want, and we've got free training videos on there and load of free stuff. So if you want some free stuff, and you're in the recruitment and staffing niche or niche, I think you guys pronounce it, go there. If you're, again, in the staffing business, we have a group on Facebook. This will come as a bit of a surprise to you, but this group is called the Make More Placements Community for Recruitment and Search Firm Owners. The Make More Placements Community for Recruitment and Search Firm Owners. Got a group there. If you're an owner or director of a recruitment or staffing firm, come and join us there. Again, we give away free training. Every Wednesday, we give away free training.
That's great. We'll definitely put the links to that on the show notes. Drew and Terry, thanks for joining me today. We'll have you back on the show in the future. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to the Rainmaking Podcast. For more information about our recruiting services for international law firms, visit our website at attorneysearchgroup.com. To inquire about having Scott speak at your next convention, conference, sales meeting, or executive retreat, visit therainmakingpodcast.com.